Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us for this special screening of Time. This is the Oscar-nominated Best Documentary Feature, directed by Garrett Bradley, offered courtesy of Amazon Studios. And we're very lucky to have Garrett join us after the film for a Q&A with Nana Adwoa Frimpong. And I hope that you guys will enjoy it. I know that the two of them will really deliver a phenomenal Q&A. The film runs about 81 minutes, so we're going to play the whole thing here during the webinar. And if you have questions, please either raise your hand or place the question in advance in the Q&A box below on the bottom of your Zoom screen. And as soon as Nana wants to open it up to the audience, we'll take some questions. We might invite some of you over for a live discussion, or we might just read them out loud. But anything you guys can do to help us out in advance would be great. So enjoy the film and stick around for the Q&A. Thanks. Okay, it's my great pleasure to welcome first our moderator for the night, Nana Adwoa Frimpong, and the writer-director of Time, Garrett Bradley. Please turn on your videos so that we can, hey, okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Oh, you're not Emily McDonald. Let me switch that for you real quick.
Oh yeah, my bad. I can do that. It could be Emily.
There we go.
Hi.
Hey, okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Nana, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's really such a treat to share this movie with everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure, and I appreciate, like, Nana, it's so great to meet you, and Alex, thanks for, taking the time to bring us all together, and thanks to everyone who's watching tonight on a weekday. So I'm just so honored to be here. Thank you.
All right, the show is all yours.
Thank you so much, Garrett. So nice to see you.
So good to see you too.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I'm in sort of like a funny room right now with like the lighting's a bit weird, and hopefully like you can see me and it's not like too strange for you, but I'm good, and I'm just happy to be here talking to you, all of you guys.
Yes, congratulations on everything that's happened with this film. So well deserved, and I'm so happy to see all of the recognition. So congrats.
Thank you. Thanks. We're all really excited.
Yes. So the story goes that you were working on your short film alone, and then you were connected through Flick, families and friends of Louisiana's incarcerated children, to Fox Rich. But can you take us from the minute you met Fox to the film that we've just seen? How did that collaboration take place?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I want to actually step back a few steps, the other direction, because, I didn't know anybody at the New York Times. All the films that I've made have come out of fruition from me bearing witness to and experiencing things in my own direct community and in my own life. And I went to the New York Times website, and anyone who's watching, who's interested in making an op doc, I didn't know anybody there. I went to newyorktimes.com/opdocs. I submitted an idea that was really rooted in thinking about incarceration from a woman's point of view, from a family's point of view. And the impetus for that was that, a friend of mine was trying to figure out how to move forward with her life while her partner was awaiting trial in a private prison for 1.5 years. And because of the stigma of incarceration, there were very few resources for her. There were very few people that she could go to just vent to get or even get advice from or support from. And so that felt to me like a real lack of justice, because as somebody who at that point I was going through like a breakup, and I had all these podcasts, meditations, friends, families, people I could go to help heal my own heartache. And she did not have that, just because of, again, the stigma of incarceration. And so I did another Google search, and I went to Flick, and that's how I found Flick. And Gina Womack, who's the co-director and founder of that organization, picked up and said, the first person your friend needs to speak with is Fox Rich. And so Fox is in Alone briefly. She makes a really vivid connection between slavery and the prison industrial complex. And I really had thought of that film as just being a facilitation of conversations that were intergenerational between women, offering support to one another. And so I got to know Fox in the process of that. We developed a level of trust with one another. And when Alone was released into the world, it felt to me as a filmmaker, like I was able to see a real absence, a real void of understanding the effects of incarceration on families. And so it was a really natural evolution to continue to speak from this perspective, to extend the short film into something that, was a second film. It wasn't me necessarily saying, let me find another story that's about incarceration. It came organically out of relationships I had developed.
Mm-hmm. But I also know that on the last day of shooting with Fox, she kind of handed you a bag of all of her archival videos from over the years, and that had to have like swayed the direction that the film went in. Can you talk about that as well?
Yes. Oh my gosh. It was like, I like to say it was like my worst nightmare and my dream come true all at the same time, because you really, part of the beauty of making, I don't know how many filmmakers, documentary filmmakers are watching tonight, but I feel like for me, a lot of the beauty of making documentary films is that it's a real honoring of the present moment, knowing what to do at any given moment, and actually anticipating an ending, anticipating an outcome kind of becomes unethical, and so you need to have something that is grounding you, something that is allowing you, guiding you for how you're making decisions, what it is you're shooting, how you're shooting it, why you're shooting it, right? This is a long-winded way of getting to your answer, but I promise I'll get there. Which is, also to say that before I start filming, I always want to have conversations with the people I'm making films about so that we can establish a mutual set of intention. Why are we making this, right? And so that intention that we developed together, which Fox and Rob were very clear with me, our story is the story of 2.3 million American families. And we feel that our story can offer hope. And so I felt like my job was, as a director, then to understand, well, what does hope look like in cinematic terms, in actionable terms? How do we see that in their daily ritual and routine? And so that's what I was looking for every single day. And in our last day of filming, and remember, Fox was on the phone with Robert, it was nighttime, and she said, hold on a second. And she came and handed me this little black bag that ended up being 100 hours of her own personal archive that she herself had not looked at since she shot it, in the 90s. And you also have to understand, like in Louisiana, when you have entire families and communities that have lost their family archive as a result of Katrina, I was holding on to her family's legacy, and the Black Family Archive in America is also sometimes the only evidence of ourselves as we see ourselves, so there was a lot of weight there. Long story short, once we got this archive, yes, I had to rethink with myself and Gabe Rhodes, who cut the film, not the intention, but the structure, and I'd like to think that North Star, those same things that were guiding me when I was shooting, remained with me in the edit. They don't go away. How do you still then choose images and structure things based on that intentionality?
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that and delving deeper into intention when it comes to film, especially in the realm of documentary. I'm interested in Fox, the woman that we see, because there's a lot of conversation, I think, in the film about the gaze and who has the gaze and when, like Fox is directing her boys on where to shoot and how to shoot. She's also directing her first commercial when we meet her. I'm interested, as somebody who's coming in to document this family and to document Rich, Fox Rich, how do you place yourself in that conversation? How do you place yourself in a conversation with a woman who has been capturing herself for X amount of years?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I didn't know that she'd been capturing herself for over 2 decades, so that wasn't even in my framework at all. I knew that she was really into social media, you know, and would go live a lot, you know what I mean? Because we were filming that, but I didn't understand that there was sort of a trajectory or history behind that in any kind of way. But I think your question is, you know, how do you develop trust, and how do you insert yourself into somebody's life, you know? And I think it's a matter of not actually inserting oneself. You have to be a part of it. You are, and being a part of it means that you need to have trust and you need to have transparency. And I think that, and transparency doesn't necessarily mean that you have all the answers. It means that you are saying just as much of what you don't know as what it is that what you're hopeful for, you know? And I think the way in which that was able to happen was by communicating. And I think that is what filmmaking is, regardless of genre. It's communication. You know, we are communicating with each other as collaborators, and then we're communicating with the world, you know, in a finished product. And then not only are we communicating with the world, but we're also communicating with other films, right? Films are also in communication with each other. And so we talked a lot about, again, why we wanted to make this film. And once we had, again, gone back to this idea of intention, this idea of showing what hope looked like for them in their daily life, that helped me to say, you know, I think it'll be really important to be at Remington's white coat ceremony, right? Or I think it'll be really important to be in the car when Robert is released, right? And well, why? Okay, well, one, because this might be our very last chance of showing that intimacy has become a privilege in our country, you know? And how do we, when we see you and Robert together at the end of the film, you know, how do we let people know in the most visceral possible way what has been taken from you for over 2 decades, right? And how does that connect again to this idea of hope, right? And when we're with Remington, you know, sort of talks about the role of image, right? And the role of responsibility and presentation and even performance, and how that feeds into the decisions he's making in his career and in his life. So we need to be there for that, you know, and how he is not defined by the system, he is defining himself, right? So all of those things feed into this central idea that we agree upon from the very beginning. And that's what transparency is, you know, and that's how trust is protected.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on your relationship with Miss Peggy, Fox's mom, as it relates to, you know, trust and really establishing an understanding of what we are doing with this film and in general.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was so thankful that Miss Peggy was willing to be in the film, because she's such an important woman to the family. You know, she helped in raising the sons. But it also, I think her perspective is a really important one, because it helps us, I think, to understand that incarceration does not just affect the one person that's incarcerated. It's an intergenerational problem. And the advice that she gives her daughter, you know, on how to go into that courtroom was a representation of her generation's mode of survival, which was give these people what they want to see, and then you'll be okay. Then you'll have your freedom. And Fox defies that advice. And it isn't just her defying her mother. She is choosing to respond to that situation in a way that reflects her generation, right? Which was like neo soul, like there was a radical, beautiful Black joy moment that was really happening in the early 90s, you know? Their hip hop clothing store was sort of like the center of that in Shreveport. So she was not going to go in there and look raggedy, you know, which is what, you know, her mother was saying, go ahead and do that, you know, just give them what they want. She went in there beautiful and strong. And again, that's her generation. And I think with the sons, you also have an opportunity to see how they also are moving through the same problem, right? And Freedom in particular, one of the twins, is really involved in politics and wants to change the system actually by being a part of the system. So I think you see, you know, hopefully in the scope of the film, you see 3 different examples that are intergenerational of how one family approaches the same problem in their own unique way.
I do want to go back to that point of joy, because I mean, there are so many tough moments in this film, but there's also a lot of joyful moments, or moments of levity in the film. Can you talk about the necessity of showing Black joy, in this story as it relates to Black women, Black narratives in general, the importance of centering joy?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, my feeling is that beauty and joy are just as powerful and just as effective modes of change and in inspiring activism as is trauma, you know. And I think that, you know, I'm reluctant to tell anybody what works and what doesn't work, or what we should do or what we should not be doing in terms of creating change, in terms of how we make our art. But I feel very much that sometimes that the trauma is not for us, you know, because we already know that, you know what I mean? And I'm interested in making things that we all can see and that we all can live with and go home to and feel safe in, you know? And that needs to run in parallel to the harder stuff that we see, right? That isn't to say that the hard stuff shouldn't be there, you know? It needs to be there so that we don't forget, but we also need to balance that out for our own, for food for ourselves, you know? And because there is so much Black joy. There is so much joy in our life, in our interior life, in our exterior life, you know? And why not? You know, it's not only, it is connected to resistance. It is connected to, it is political, but it's also just deeply human. And it's something that we need. We need celebration. We need joy. It's essential.
Agreed. There are many, you know, different iterations or definitions rather of time in the film. You have each of the subjects talk about what time means. And I've heard you even talk about, you know, as it relates to incarceration being invisible by design. And this text invites us to get curious about what time means, right? Like who gets to own time and who gets to say when enough is enough. I'm interested for you if your definitions of time evolved in working on this project. Did you have a definition when you went in, and did it change over time?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm not sure if it changed, but I think there were certain things that were kind of reinforced for me, you know, which is, you know, something that Gabe who cut the film, talked a lot about, was wanting the film to feel like memory feels, you know? And when we remember something, you know, in any given moment, it could have been from 30 years ago, it could have been from a month ago. When you remember it, your body understands it as the present moment, you know? There is no distinction between any tenses of time. And so how in two-dimensional space, one frame at a time, in cinema and filmmaking, how do we mimic that same feeling? You know, how do we mimic the totality of life as it feels, you know? That is like the ultimate challenge, you know, I think. And so part of the way in which we wanted to construct the film was to feel as though, you know, and I'm going to go back to actually this moment with Remington at the white coat ceremony, right before we see him, you know, we see him as a 6-year-old kid telling his mom in the car, I will be there for you no matter what. You tell me to carry those bags. I don't care how far you need me to go. I will be there and I will carry them for you, right? He's taking that on for his mother, right? And that hasn't changed 20 years later, right? So we understand, and when we see his mother, when we see Fox in the audience, so proud of him, you know, you understand that all those moments are wrapped into one. There is no distinction between the past and the present. And that was something we really wanted people to feel when they watched the film, because again, that is how we actually live our life, you know?
I'm wondering, how long did you film with the family?
It was about 1.5 years of filming off and on. It was pretty short, and then we were editing for, I think in total 9 months. So it was, you know, it was actually a pretty rapid process, you know, I have to say. I mean, that probably doesn't sound rapid to everybody, but in a documentary context, like it was pretty fast, you know, it wasn't a 10-year kind of thing. Yeah.
With all of the success that the film has garnered, and you know, all of the accolades, etc., I'm interested to know for you, what has been the most joyful part of this process, like having the film out and having people respond to it? What has been the best part for you?
I think that I think the best part honestly has been being able to share the film with the people who helped make it happen, right? So obviously the family, but also our film team, and you know, we making films is really hard. It's a lot of hard work, and there's no promises, you know, attached to it, and you have to take chances, and you have to be brave, and you can't give up when you want to give up, and no one's telling you this is relevant, this is going to matter, this is going to make a difference. You know, you're kind of taking a gamble on yourself and on your team. Everyone is agreeing to go in together on a gamble, and so I think it's been really, really gratifying for us that that people are saying this has touched me. You know, this film has touched me, and that stories like this matter. And I think awards and recognition and that kind of thing, you know, at their best, they are a reflection of what society and what our culture is saying is important. You know, they are a temperature read of our cultural consciousness. You know, and so I think that has been the most incredible thing for us, is to be able to see that people feel like stories like this matter, stories made by people like us matter, and that the form also, you know, that that there are different ways in which documentaries can exist, that matters, and that's an important thing, even just for cinema, even in and of itself, documentary filmmaking in and of itself.
Agreed. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I do now want to go to questions from the audience.
I think we should just read a few out loud from the Q&A that's the questions that have already come in.
Cool.
So if there are any in here that really excite you both, feel free to just go ahead and call them out.
Garrett, people want to know why shooting in black and white.
Well, I had so the short film alone was in black and white, and I still consider them sister films, but I was really, you know, going straight into making time. I knew that all the formal choices, you know, the visual and aesthetic choices were going to be exactly the same that they were in Alone, as a way of always keeping them together in some way. But all the archive, you know, when Fox, you know, handed this archive over, it was in beautiful, vivid color. It was like so lush, and it was gorgeous. And so we did experiment actually with it being in color. But I felt like it was like jumping from one stone to the next, you know, and you could really, there's different textures. There's so many different qualities that are happening. And I felt like, again, we wanted it to feel like a river, you know, as opposed to a quilt or different stones you were hopping to. And so the black and white, we ultimately kind of came back to it because it was like the saran wrap, you know, over the film. It just kind of helped. It just helped us flow, you know, again. Yeah. And it's beautiful. I love black and white, you know.
I do too. Okay. Do you feel, this is from Rebecca. She said, do you feel that your documentary would be an excellent catalyst for change and awareness to the plight of the African American family, dealing with the correctional system that literally endorses enslavement?
Do I feel that? Yeah, I mean, do I feel that it would be, what was the first?
A catalyst for change.
Oh, a catalyst for change. I hope so. I mean, I think, again, going back to like, what is change? How do we create change? I mean, I think historically speaking, seeing has been believing. Being able to see what's happening has a huge impact on creating change, on making people aware of things. And I'd like to think that it isn't that we as a society don't care or don't want to know. I think that we're inundated with a lot of things. And I think that it is very difficult for us to see what's happening, you know? And so our job, and if they did understand and if they could see, they would want to change it, you know? And so I do hope that the film can be a catalyst for change in that way, because it's offering visibility to the 2.3 million people that are incarcerated in our country right now, and who are only seen by way of their family, by way of those that are on the outside. And so certainly that is a goal, that is a hope, and truly, I hope that there are many, many more films like this from this perspective. You know, this doesn't have to be Steve McQueen. I'll never forget when 12 Years a Slave came out, he said, you know, I just hope this isn't the one film. You know, there are so many stories that can be told from this time period. And I would say the same is true for this. There are many, many stories that can be told from this perspective.
Mm-hmm. Raj has a question, and I think this goes in line with what you were saying earlier, Garrett, about like the ethics involved of creating documentary. Did you ever recreate some scenes to show some continuation of her journey, or something that you felt was missing?
No.
Yeah.
But it's funny. It's a good question, because I mean, the archive in some way is like a recreation of the things that I knew intuitively to be true, you know? Because, you know, and I think that's part of the challenge is when you're making a film. I mean, the things that, like, I could have had Fox sit down and tell me what she was like when she was younger, you know, or recount all these memories that we see in the archive. And it just would not have been the same. So I don't know, in some ways, I think the archive kind of functions in that way, you know, which I had never really thought about, actually.
Another question from Joe Sue, who asks, what is Rob's graduation in and out from prison, the white coat ceremony?
What? Oh, sorry. I'm not sure I understand that question.
I understand either.
Well, I can say that the white coat ceremony is actually an induction into dentistry school. Yeah, so that's for Remington, the oldest son. And it's at Meharry College, which is a sort of historic Black dental school, and in Nashville. And so that's what that was. It was his actually the beginning of dentistry school, and he is about to graduate in May from that same institution. So it's been he's almost done. It's amazing. Time flies.
So we also have a couple of raised hands, which I'm just gonna hit allow to talk, and we'll just go in order.
Yay! I'm so glad we get to see people.
Oh, well, you know what? Let's bring them all the way over then. Randall, I'll add you as a panelist, and then we'll bring over Michael.
Only if you want to be on camera, Randall. Also, sorry, I didn't put you on the spot.
Normally I give them that heads up, but let's see, Randall, you're welcome to join us on camera. And Michael, I'll preemptively move you over as well. All right, well, since we have Michael Farmer, let's just go ahead and start with you.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, I can't believe I'm talking to you. I really loved your film. Coming from a family that's been separated by our country's penal system, this film really, really meant so much to me. And just really gave words and voice to a part of my life that I've never really been able to talk about, and let alone see on screen. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But my question was actually about Emma Hoy and how you came to work with her on the score, and what the process was working her was like, because I was a big fan of her music before watching this film, and then I was really surprised to see her. I thought I recognized the music, and I was surprised to see her.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. First of all, I just want to say thank you for sharing that, because I think these aren't things that we always feel safe or comfortable to talk about. And in fact, it's a majority experience in our country, you know? And so I just want to thank you and honor you for sharing that with everybody. Yeah, so Emma Hoy's music, I actually was like this funny, like cosmic thing that happened because I had all these Ethiopian playlists on my YouTube account. And I always like to say, like, I don't know if this was just like cosmic or if it was like actually the algorithm like listening to my talking. And so like, but somehow this one track just popped up called Mother's Love from the album. And I heard it and I fell in love with it. And we put it to picture and it worked really well. Like it helped with that sort of the flow and the feeling of it being like a river, you know? But then when I started to read about who she was, and she's still alive. She's a 96-year-old Ethiopian nun. She lives in Israel. She was a prisoner of war and a pianist prodigy. And instead of following that as her path, she became a nun and recorded one album in 1963, which is this where this music comes from, for the purpose of raising money for an orphanage. And so I also just loved the idea of bringing these two women together, these two radical women who were really paving a path for themselves in their own right. It just felt like, why not? How could we not bring them together, you know? So that's how that came to happen. And thank you. I'm so, you know more than me, because I actually didn't know about her music until it just popped up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so do we want to try Randall again? If you're out there, Randall? And if not, we can go directly over to Rebecca. All right, Rebecca, the floor is yours. Okay, if Rebecca's camera isn't working either, we can go to Carla.
I look insane, so I am not going to put my camera on. I'm going to tell you this right now. I look completely nuts. So now I lost my question. Alex, is my question anymore?
Yes.
Oh, there it is. Okay, great. So this film was amazing. My question is, so Fox Rich is obviously a powerhouse who speaks with the passion of a preacher. Yet some of her most powerful moments in the film are when she is quiet. How did you determine when to let her silence speak for her?
That's such a great question, Carla. Thank you. You know, I don't think I really made that decision. I think that she made that decision and the footage made that decision, you know? I think I was really guided, you know. I think that's also what being a documentarian is like you have intention, you have, you know, you have a goal to a certain extent, but then you really are being guided by what's in front of you, you know, by the reality that is presented in front of you. And I don't think that changes in the edit either. So those moments of silence were her moments, you know. They weren't rearranged in any kind of way to mean something different. They were a reflection of that moment that she was in. And so it's really a testament, I think, to her own brilliance, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's see if Rebecca is with us. And I'll bring over one last person, Casey Christian, to wrap up. Okay, unfortunately, I don't have a typed question from Rebecca, so she might have just hit the hand function by accident. But in the meantime, it looks like Casey is on the panelist side now. So Casey, you're welcome to jump in.
Actually, I see here Randall says, no question, I'm just enjoying the conversation. Thank you, Randall. And I see Rebecca says, I just wanted to say, well done. Editing is really good. Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, maybe we can just read Casey's question. Your film chronicled so much hope over the years by the family, and the ending was so touching. Since Mr. Richardson was sentenced to 60 years without possibility of parole, how was it that he was freed sooner? How many children are there in the Richardson family? I saw the section regarding twins, justice and freedom. Were they born before they went to prison? I found it hard to follow the timeline and didn't understand how much time Mr. Richardson had served. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so there was a lot of questions in there. I'm sorry. So they have 6 sons. And Freedom and Justice are the twins, who were conceived during parole, as was Robert Jr. And clemency is an ongoing effort that actually is nationwide, and it allows governors to release people by having a more thorough look at people's cases. And so Robert was released on clemency in the state of Louisiana. I should say he is on parole for another 40 years of his life. He has a 9 p.m. curfew, and he needs to get permission from Angola in order to leave the state. So that is another conversation around open air imprisonment and the role in which parole continues to, the system essentially has people for life in many cases.
Thank you, Garrett. That was the last question for tonight, but I just want to say thank you so much for being here. You are the filmmaker of my dreams. I just love all of your films. And yeah, I'm just so grateful to be able to be in conversation with you. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Such beautiful questions. And I just appreciate your time and everyone who joined us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
And good luck. We're all pulling for you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Thanks a million.
All right, y'all be
Good night,
safe.
everyone.
Bye.